Hey guys, welcome back to the Covenant Keeper podcast. I am Brent, as always, with my beautiful wife, Miss Lucy. And today we are super excited, guys, because we have a special guest with us today, Mr. Josh Corbin.
Yes, Mr. Josh Corbin that we've known for, I don't know.
Almost 10-ish years, something like that.
Sounds good.
It's been a while.
Yeah,
But
it's been a little while. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Josh Corbin is a mortgage specialist out of Tampa, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and some of your background?
Sure. So I'm a rare bird. I'm a Tampa native, born and raised. I've lived in the same zip code almost my entire life. I've lived in the same neighborhood 34 of my 38 years. I bought the house next door to my parents 12 years ago. So I live in the same neighborhood.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Friends. No,
it's
a fun fact.
Wow.
Yeah. It does make some of those security questions really easy to answer, because what street did you grow up on? Yeah, Tampa native. I'm married to my beautiful bride, Amanda. We've been married 16 years. We have 2 kids. Genesis is 14. She's now in high school. She's in 9th grade. I'm not that old. And Bennett, my son, is 10. He is in 5th grade. He is all boy. He plays in the dirt. He builds stuff. He breaks stuff.
We have to get them together with our son then.
Absolutely. Yeah, we do. We love it. It's especially now that as we roll out of this COVID season, just the getting out is a good thing. But my wife is actually a licensed clinical social worker. She has her master's of social work. She's a trained clinician. She's licensed with the state. She teaches at the University of South Florida in the social work program, and she's a licensed registered supervisor. So all the social work interns who want to become licensed, she does that. I personally have my master's of divinity from Liberty University in chaplaincy. Thumbs up for Liberty.
Liberty, yay!
Flames, baby, flames.
Yeah. Pause.
It's good.
But Liberty has been it was a great background. I chose chaplaincy because I knew that I was going to be helping people. I love helping people. That's a big part of my heart, especially in tough situations. I've been a pastor at a church here in Tampa for quite some time, up until, unfortunately, the summer because of COVID. But as a supplemental source of income, I got into mortgaging. And I chose mortgaging because it is one of those things that really helps people in a very, very stressful time. Buying a house, so other than getting married, having children and buying a house are the 2 most stressful events that any young couple or married couple really goes through until you face those big crises like death or divorce. But I like mortgaging because it allowed me to be flexible, set my own schedule. I get to do but I get to educate, and that's a big part of my heart. I love to teach. I love to teach the Bible, and I love educating people. And honestly, if my wife shared a post, she knows it's mortgage by day, ministry by night. And honestly, I tell people I mortgage so that I can do ministry.
Well, definitely, and I love the fact that you guys, you and your wife Amanda, are so transparent. As far as being real. And you're talking about helping people, and that's what brings that guard down, when people can feel like they can relate to you, and finding that passion that God has put in you to help people. And I love to see the passion, and I always share this with people, like to see God's passion inside come out to where you don't work a day in your life, to be honest with you. When you tap into that passion that God has put inside of you, it makes you feel, how can I say, it spurs something like, wow, really, God is allowing me to do this. To touch people's lives.
And it feels good. It doesn't feel like work. Like it doesn't feel like an obligation. That's the word.
Yeah. Yeah, you got the good words. I just get
and Josh has that. He's always had that gentle spirit. It's kind of calming and soothing when people talk to you. You're not like, okay, there's.
Well, that came in handy for a pastor, I would think.
That's what I mean. Like there's some pastors that are kind of like, and kind of rigid, and
Right.
Josh, as long as I've known him, he's always very approachable. He has that Jesus thing.
Yeah, and a few weeks ago my hair was much longer. For those of you on audio, my hair was actually probably about 3 inches below my shoulder.
So you're really going for it. You're really going for the Jesus thing.
I was. At least that's, I wear the sandals around. My initials are JC. I used to be a carpenter.
Hey.
I got a ministry at 30. I mean, I got a lot going for me here.
I'm really going to pull the curtain back, Josh, because was it yesterday we saw I think your wife shared a post, and I scanned into the bottom of the picture, and I noticed that you were doing a Bible teaching barefoot.
I was.
Which I thought was awesome.
Yes, I happened to. I was working on a loan file, and I knew I needed some natural light. I love natural light when I make videos, and I had to get it done. And so I stopped what I was doing. I went outside. I recorded my video, and unbeknownst to me, my wife took some photos of me talking to my cell phone. But I was there barefoot and sitting in my backyard, and it became kind of a Facebook sensation.
Oh, I know. We loved it. And it's awesome because we're kind of in that space where we get the privilege to work from home. Mm-hmm. So, we barefoot, sure. Shorts, okay. Like, as long as it works and the person feels comfortable, like, we're doing good.
I may or may not be barefoot right now.
I'm going to vote yes.
Yes. We're doing the Jesus thing, sandals, barefoot, whatever you want.
Hey, knock the sand off your sandals, yes. Yep. Before we go into, because we want to talk about today, which is something you brought up, and I thought it was awesome when you shared with us when we reached out to you, was stress and home-free buying. Well, I'm sorry, stress-free, home-free. That doesn't make sense.
Stress-free home buying experience.
That's why I have a wife to be my suitable helper, because I
yes.
Before I go into that, though, I call your daughter's name is Genesis.
Yeah.
You're a pastor, and obviously Genesis being the beginning, the first book of the
yes.
Bible. How did the name come about for your daughter?
So I'm not a Phil Collins fan, so it's not the band. If you're over the age of probably 39, you get that joke. If you're younger than that, you don't, but that's okay. Phil Collins had a band named Genesis back in the 80s. So no, that's not it. I always loved the name Genesis. The long short of it was I actually led a youth ministry of middle schoolers and I named it Genesis. When I was a young adult, I wanted to start a record label. That was one of my dreams. I called it Genesis. I actually have. This is really cute and sentimental. I made my wife a mixed CD when we first started dating. So this would have been 2001. And I printed out the label and had a bunch of love songs like Boston's Amanda. But I titled the record company Genesis Inc. And so when we found out that we were pregnant, which was on, pretty sure it was Father's Day. It was Father's Day of 2005. We found out, and then a couple weeks later we had the ultrasound. And when we found out we were going to have a girl, we were at Macaroni Grill here on Dunmabry and Ehrlich, and we sat down and we were looking at the sonograms. And she's like, "Well, what would we name our daughter?" And I said, Genesis. And that was it. I never considered another name, and I'm pretty sure she had a list. It was scrapped right after that moment, but that's where it came from.
Wow, you are just full of secrets that we don't know.
That was pretty awesome.
That is phenomenal.
That's a great story. But what really caught me, Josh, is that you said you had a mixed CD. Because when I was making mixed tapes, man, and I was literally like back in the day.
I had my fair share of mixed tapes. I had mixed tapes, but this was actually a CD, and I had the printer paper that went through my inkjet, real terrible with all the lines in it.
Yes.
But yeah,
that's awesome. Wow.
All right. So let's bring it around to something that's really going to be helpful for people. Let's talk about this. Keys to successful and stress-free home buying experience. Because this is what you're doing. I mean, aside ministry is what you're doing now. Talk to that couple out there that is maybe this is the first time buying a home. They're getting into this time frame. Tell us why, like, coming to Josh, how are you helping me? How are you helping that person?
Like, what's the proper order of buying a house?
There is, and that is the key. And so the first step is not to go on Realtor or Zulu or on the internet and start shopping for houses. I meet a lot of people who they get excited about a house, and before they can get pre-approved or before they can make that offer, it's gone. And so then it becomes a very emotional decision, not a logical, factual decision. So really, this being the biggest decision most couples make, really the best thing you can do is figure out what you can afford. So for me, there's a couple steps. I'm big on that first interview. I've met with multiple individuals and families who want to buy that house, and they haven't been educated. So we talk about credit score. What is a healthy credit score? Right now, anything over a 640 is really good. 720 is even better. Through COVID, things changed. It got very tight for a while. But it's understanding where your credit score is, understanding your debt to income ratio. That's one of the things that often kills the deal, is that many people don't realize how much house or how much debt they have to how much income they have. And we look in gross numbers, and that's a very big factor. And I think those are things that have to be considered. A lot of reasons people consider buying a house is they're fed up paying rent. They're living in a house. They're paying $1,500, $1,600, $1,700, $1,800 to live in a house that, if they owned it themselves, could be $1,400, $1,500, $1,600. So it could be a substantial savings to own versus, renting that house. And so it's meeting with a professional, getting with the loan originator, letting them break down your numbers. If you feel comfortable, and that's for me, we speak in generalities up first. Do you have an rough idea what your credit score is? Do you have a rough idea what your debts are? Do you know what your gross monthly income is? And then we look to see how much money they have in savings or saved for down payment. And if they feel comfortable, then we go to the next step, which is that application stage, where they go through and we run their credit, we validate their income. We know exactly what their debt to income ratio is. And if it's good, then they receive a pre-approval, and then they meet with a licensed real estate agent. Yes, Miss Lucy. Speaking of newly licensed agents.
Yes. Yes, it's funny because as I'm training and learning, one of my realtor friends, I was asking her, well, what if you get, when you get a potential buyer looking for a house, like what's the first thing that you look for? She goes, they need to have a pre-approval. You need to make sure what they can afford, because you don't want them, like you said, getting their hopes up on something that, it's probably won't be the case for them if they don't, get the pre-approval. So it made me think about Josh Corbin. Like, okay, so Josh is where I'm sending these people that need the pre-approval before I can even do anything with them.
Yeah. And there's an interview on both sides. I truly believe in a law of attraction, not in a weird way, but you have to like the person you're working with. This is a multi-$100,000 transaction. This is a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 investment. And, some of the years gone by, the standard for a conventional mortgage was putting 20% down. This day and age, you can actually do it for as little as 3%, which is much better, but it's still a substantial amount of cash, and you want someone who's trained and educated to do it. So you want to know that your real estate agent is qualified to do it and is in your best interest, and that you work together. Because as much as I would love the home buying process to be stress-free, there are moments that it's stressful. Case in point, right now, I have a buyer who is looking to buy a house, and we got the appraisal, and it was $10,000 under contract price. And so they had to make some very tough decisions. Do we go and negotiate? Do we cancel the contract? Do we pay the difference? You want to know that your realtor is able to do that, and you want to know that your mortgage specialist is on your side. And we work really diligently over the last 3 days to see what's going on, but it's tough. I give you that. There are moments where it's hard, because you've kind of fallen in love with the house. You've become, you're now financially interested and invested. And now you have to make some, long-term decisions. And that's what I love to do. I wrote a long email. I broke down all the numbers so they could see it side by side. Do we pay the difference? Do we not? And that's that education piece that I find highly valuable.
Wow, that's really good. That's awesome that you do that.
Well, I love that you go the extra mile, because that's huge. I'm telling you, it's been a while since we bought a house. It was 2010, 2011, we were around in
Like
there.
9-10 years now.
So it's been a while, but I can still remember that emotion of going through the process, finding the loan specialist that we had, the mortgage specialist that we had. And it is a factor because like when you're reaching out and you get a little bit of stress, like is things going to happen and they're not going to happen. And you shoot an email or a phone call and you don't get that response back or a response back, or you keep sending stuff and you're like, well, what's happening? What's going on? We're in limbo here.
Right.
I want to have the confidence that the person that I'm working with on the other side has my best interest at heart.
Right.
Because I want someone to say, hey, Brent, I know you love the situation, but based upon the information that we have, you might want to consider X, Y, and Z.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because that's going to build the trust and the confidence for myself to say, you know what? That's the direction.
Absolutely. Because the opposite is also true. I have another borrower right now. They got their appraisal back and it was $27,000 over contract price. Wow. Which is great news because literally them buying the house, they have gained equity. Immediately. They have bought the house and they have increased their investment. All the money that she's going to put down is going to be more than doubled immediately by her buying the house. So, there are moments like that where things work out and there's sometimes where it's not. But, the goal is in that beginning stages, in that pre-approval application stage where we really look at long-term goals. Are your kids going to college? Are you going to pay college for them? Do you have to buy a car? Where's your job situation? All those things factor into, your affordability of a home, and that's a big part of it.
Wow, I'm sure you're building quite a bit of relationship when you get involved with clients and doing this. Just from knowing you and the way you are with people, like you're just that people person that people want to talk to, and you work with your whole heart.
Well, I'm thinking about it like I'm the emotional guy. If you can't tell, Josh, like for most of us, pulling back that curtain on our financial situation, that can be frightening. And again, like when I said, getting into those situations where someone that you feel confident is going to be like, maybe you might want to work on some of this stuff over here to get you where you're trying to get to is huge. And again, when I say personality and relationship, someone that they can trust and move forward with. Do you have any other points or questions you want to ask on what we've been so far?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So let's just say that they've, in essence, they've done the pre-approval thing. You said everything looks good. We got into the next process where you're actually, I'm assuming you're running the credit at that point.
Yep.
When you feel confident.
So we've got the contract. So, they've filled out the application. We've reviewed their credit. And then either there's a letter of approval or a letter of adverse action. Basically means you're not approved. We as a company work really hard to not say no. We just say not yet. And I'm a big believer in, I think owning a home is the American dream. It's a big part of the American dream, being your own boss, owning your own home. If you are financially responsible, I think that's something you should attain to. There are some probably life situations where owning a home is not good. If you have physical limitations and keeping up the grass, keeping up the pool, keeping up a standalone detached unit might not be the best purchase. It might be better you buy a condo or a townhouse. But ultimately, owning your own property is a big thing. It's just learning when is the right time to do it. And, that's a big part of that approval process. It's also, is this home going to be temporary? Is this a 4 or 5 year purchase so that you can move somewhere else? You intend to live by the beach or the mountains? You want to move into the city? Things like that really are taken into consideration as I get to know, my borrowers, because I want to know that I'm offering them something that's going to be beneficial. And that affects rate and term. Is it a adjustable rate mortgage? Is it a 10-year note versus a 30-year note? Things like that really play into, the products that are available so that the borrower has that best option. And, and then from there, one part of the application is running the credit. And then once I have approved, I send you this pretty letter that says congratulations, and I do all the little fancy emojis, and we celebrate. And then I said, all right, time to connect your lender and go shopping for a house. And from there, it then works into the negotiations with the realtor, and then I get the contract, and then it's the approval process. And usually, in most cases, we do it in 30 days. So once I have the contract to the sales date is typically 30 days. COVID has done some interesting things. For multiple reasons, it slowed some of the appraisals down, and it's actually, there's a lot of work right now. A lot of people refinancing because of lower interest rates.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are still buying houses, and houses are moving very quickly. I've heard many stories where offers were made on a Thursday or Friday, and it's accepted on a Sunday, and there's 10, 15, 20 offers on a house. So
Wow.
being pre-approved is a very, very important part, because you need your offer to look as appealing as possible in that moment. So that's why I do a lot of scrubbing, getting things together up front, so that when it's time to make that offer, you can stand behind it.
That's awesome.
Well, I do have a question. So, okay, so you're running credit, right? People are excited because they want to buy a house, and there needs to be some restoring of credit. I don't know. I mean, I've heard a lot about credit restoration here in these days. Is there somebody you work with, like where you send this couple, like, hey, you can talk to this person? And
I haven't. I have a couple relationships where I would refer most people, if they followed some basic rules of building their credit, that they can do it themselves, and it costs a lot less, because any debt consolidation company is going to charge you for their services. But the basic rules, keeping your credit cards under 30% utilization. So if you've got it, for example, if you've got a $10,000 credit card, keeping it below 3,000 is great. Keep making those payments. No big purchases. That will kill a deal. I've lost a couple. Someone's buying a house and they think, oh, I can go buy that car, and they skew their debt to income ratio. They think, and the deal's dead. And it's those things that really are basic, that you can, you can make calls about collections if they're old. And annualcreditreport.com. It's the government's website. Typically, you're entitled to one free annual credit report a year. Now, it doesn't have your score. It's just your report. So all your liabilities will be listed.
Okay.
But right now, because of COVID, they are giving people one free credit report a week through April of 2021.
A week? Wow.
A week. Every week, you could get your credit report pulled if you wanted to, without it affecting your credit at all. So, it's a beautiful thing, and a lot of people don't know that. But if you pull that, you get a free copy. You can look at it, make sure that all the lines of credit are yours, that someone hasn't taken your Social Security and stolen and opened a credit line in your name. I've heard horror stories of that. I know some people have done it personally.
Wow.
You want to know if you're on time, and that's the big part of your credit score is, on-time payments.
Wow. Well, definitely a lot of food for thought for people out there that are looking to buy.
Well, again, I'm stuck on the emotion, man. I get stuck on the emotion side of things. That's the technical stuff, which is what my wife is great at.
Well, I think, and I get the emotion, because there is, and sometimes, like, I have some basic rules when I talk to people of embracing the process, and I try to be I don't always want to just say this is how every day is going to look like for the next 30 days. But I try to walk people through it. Like our company, we've developed a smartphone app that gives you notifications. Your loan has been received. Your appraisal has been received.
Oh, I like that.
Your loan has moved to processing. Your loan has moved to underwriting. Your loan is now, it's been approved. We have this cool one. It says, yoo-hoo, or wahoo, or woohoo. It says you've been cleared to close, or whatever. But those little notifications are really helpful. I'm also big on communicating that. I love to know, my 2 borrowers that I got right now, I send them an email. Hey, your loan has moved to processing. Congratulations. Your loan has been sent to underwriting. And because we want to know, the realtor wants to know. This is actually not just for the borrower, but for the realtor themselves. Because oftentimes there's a contingency. The seller of the house is waiting their house to sell so that they can buy the next one. And there's a link, and I don't want to be the one responsible for something falling behind. There's always those moments, that there's things that are out of our control. COVID has proven that. But I think to the key basics, like being available, and just being able to answer the phone. I've met some borrowers who aren't available. And if my underwriter, my processor needs a document now, I need that, because your loan, because there's another, if my loan is held up in processing, then there's another loan behind it that's not getting processed. And, and there can be some emotions, and it's sometimes what's hard. I think one of the most stressful things is when you get asked repeatedly for the same document. It happens, but it's okay. Especially, for example, the borrowers I'm working with, they applied back in June. Well, I used their May, June bank statements as part of their qualification. Well, now we're in September. So I now need June and July and August bank statements because we've moved that far along in the calendar. And it might seem redundant, but right now it's part of the qualification of keeping the loan alive. Are you still employed? Because if you lost your job and you don't have a pay stub, then you're not buying a house. It's those things like that, or potentially buying a house.
I love the level of communication, because in this day and age where, we're counselors as well. So the anxiety level, right, is like through the roof with a lot of people. So communicating with your clients and the borrowers, like, it probably helps with the level of anxiety and stress, like having to wait, like, oh my gosh, are things moving along? Is there something stuck somewhere? So I love that you guys do that, especially the app that you mentioned. That's awesome.
That is great. Cool. Go ahead.
Yeah, there's the hard part. I had one borrower who thought they were the center of the universe, and they thought they were the only loan in the entire company. That just wasn't the case. So in August, my company, we closed in total. We're nationwide. I think we had like 450 loans close. My regional loan, so the East Coast, so Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, we did 125 of those in a month, and so we're busy. The beautiful thing, I didn't say this at the beginning, but Security National, so we're publicly traded. We're a direct lender, which is good for the realtor and it's good for the buyer, because we fund our own loans. So I'm not a brokerage where I've taken the application and I have another smaller company or someone else funding my loan. I fund our loans. It also allows my processing and underwriting and closers all to be in-house. So I really do know where the loan is its entire life until funding. So from pre-application to funding, it's in my purview. I'm watching it, I'm monitoring it, I'm in communication with my departments. That way the realtor and the buyer is in knowledge of what's going on. And there are some days, like I had, it can take 24, 48, 72 hours, hopefully not, but that we're waiting for an answer. It's not pleasant, but that's part of the game, not the game, it's just part of the process.
Right.
Josh, I want to ask you about this, because it made me thinking as you're talking through there and, talking about stress and couples and marriages and that type of thing. What about that couple that's, had some financial stresses? I know we talked about building credit back up, but let's talk about the big whammy in the room, like a bankruptcy.
Yeah.
And people thinking, okay, I'm automatically like, there's no chance I'm ever going to be able to get a house. Talk to that couple.
So there's a couple different rules. And again, it's everyone's scenario is counted differently. So for example, if you've had a foreclosure in the last 7 years, more than likely you're going to qualify for an FHA loan if it's been 3 years or more, depending on the circumstance. So you will, unless you do something truly horrific with your credit, you can buy a house again. Okay. But there's just rules. A bankruptcy is treated differently than a foreclosure. And even for a conventional loan, it's the circumstances behind. Did your house go into foreclosure in a short sale because of a divorce? Did you have a family member who became deathly ill? Those things are actually taken into consideration. The industry isn't so inhumane that we're just not going to lend someone money, but at the same time, if you were the person who had 30 lines of credit, you had 28 credit cards and 2 cars, and you weren't making payments on anything, and you've shown yourself to be credit unworthy, you've not been responsible with credit, it's going to be really hard to get a house. If you've had 6 repos in your history of cars and you've defaulted, you have 8 credit cards in collections, it's going to be really hard. It might be a sign that you need to get some financial counseling through, like Crown Ministries or something like that, where you go and get help with your money. But it's never over. It's just different. And there's even like untraditional lines of credit, people who don't have credit. If you can show 2 or more years of rental history, if you have 0 credit cards, no student loans, and no car payments, you don't have traditional credit. But if you've been renting for 2 or more years and we can prove that you've been paying rent, we can use things like that to qualify you. It's going to be a little harder, but it's doable. But there's a risk factor. We are lending you $200,000. I need to know that you're going to be able to pay us back.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Well, that brings up a good point, because we have, like 10 years ago, decided that we were not going to live in debt. We weren't going to have credit cards. We were like, if we don't have the cash, we are not buying it.
That's true.
Understand.
So if we really want it, we're going to save up the money to buy it cash.
Yes.
So say a couple like us comes in to buy a house, right? And we don't have any credit cards. So we have, like, I guess the house payment, right?
That would
make
that would qualify you.
Okay. So that's it. Like, I don't need to have a bunch of credit cards to, okay.
Yeah. No, if you made that choice, a great number of people, with the Financial Peace University, decided not to go with credit. You're not going to be faulted because you haven't. It actually shows you to be very financially responsible. But if you bought a house 10 years ago and you're looking to refinance, right now rates again are historically low. It's crazy. And you just said, I think I want to lower my payment. I want to cancel my MI. I need to consolidate some. You don't have any debt, but you've gone through that life change. You got a child getting married, and you need $30,000-$40,000 to pay for that wedding. I hope you don't spend that much money on.
Or like renovate. Or let's just say renovate.
Okay, renovate your house. It's time to renovate the house. It's time to get a new bathroom. You're going to want to use that equity, and it builds on the investment. Your credit history of making that mortgage payment should be sufficient. In most cases, that would be sufficient. There might be some circumstances where it's not, but in most cases, that would be sufficient.
Well, I think it's important, and I love that we're talking about this because, again, like we said, we sit with a lot of couples, and a lot of couples, not a lot, a few of them have the situations where, one of their big dreams is to own a home. We're in a situation and things are already stressful in the relationship, and they may have been sitting on the fence like, okay, when we finally arrive, then we'll be able to get the house. Like, it's in the future, and that fear of not knowing some of those questions that we've been answering today, I think it's very helpful to build some of that security to be able to start taking some of those steps. Like I said, there's a lot of different kinds of, how would you say, false information out there about when it goes to buy a house and what you need to buy a house. And I think that's why it's important to get with a specialist like yourself to find out the facts.
Right.
Yes.
Not just go by hearsay, thinking, like I said before, well, what if you have a bankruptcy? I may be thinking, well, there's no chance for like 10 years because that's what I've always been told.
Or the foreclosure.
Yeah, it was. And some 7, but no, that's not always the case. It could be 2 or 3 years. It depends on the type of bankruptcy and the type of foreclosure. As you say stuff, especially Brent, let's just harp on the emotion side of this again. I'm trained in Prepare and Enrich and in Symvest. I'm a huge fan and proponent of Prepare and Enrich, and I've used Prepare and Enrich for both premarital and marriage counseling. And in that workbook, there is a 10 steps to conflict resolution worksheet, and that I've often used buying a house or where to live as a main discussion point. What is the conflict? And there's a few key tips, and it's defining how you own the problem. If one of you wanted to live in the city and the other wants to live in the country, well, that's your source of your conflict. You cannot agree of where you want to live. And then you begin to brainstorm. Brainstorming, and you have to do it without criticism. And that's where a lot of people get it wrong, is someone says something that the other doesn't like. Say, well, maybe we could just live in an RV. We could buy, and someone, the spouse says, that's stupid. Well, the moment you've done that, you've lost. The conversation is over. You've been critical. Feelings are hurt. The other person shut down, and there's no resolve. And I think that's a big. So the back to the source is we learn to be patient. We got to learn to listen. Active listening is a huge part of trying to understand. What are all the factors that we're considering in buying this house? Distance to my job, distance to the kid's school, distance to church, distance to family. And then you consider the location. Are we going to start off with a townhome, or are we going to buy a standalone home? Do we want land? Do we want ocean waterfront? Do we want city living? And we're all going to have to make some kind of concession of where we live. I tell people we often die over preferences, and when we should be dying over principles.
That's good.
And to define that for a second, a preference is crunchy or creamy peanut butter. That is a preference. Okay. Or what side, which way you put the toilet paper. That is a preference.
Oh, that's important.
But I didn't say it's not important. It's still a preference.
Yes.
But principles are things like family, and church, and generosity, and safety, and honesty. These are things. And so as a couple, if you're really considering where to move or how much to spend, you kind of have to lay it out in black and white. You need to know truly how much you can afford. If you might, go ahead.
Well, no, you hit. I didn't interrupt you. I'll talk when you're done.
Okay. If you might have your eyes set on that beach house property that's worth $1.5 million, that's great. But if you're only able to afford a $140,000 townhouse, then you can't be looking up there when your bread and butter says you're here. So that gives you two choices. One, you wait until your income allows you to buy the bigger house, or two, you stair step it. You learn to buy that townhouse, turn it into an investment property in 5 to 7 years. Now you have passive income, which counts towards your ability to repay. But black and white, you got to cut out the feelings sometimes, and then you can begin to decide. But you lay out those factors. These are the things that we're looking at: schools, neighborhood, distance to family, community opportunities, those things. Do you want a gated community? Do you not? This is where your realtor comes in real handy, that they can sort through all these details. But those are the things. But for the mortgage side, it's truly how much house can you afford, period.
And that's where, and I'm sorry, when I started getting excited again, and you've kind of answered a little bit where I was going with it, but, let's just say you get approved for, $500,000 for a house, 500,000. And,
Okay.
and so you're thinking, well, I'm approved for this much, so I need to go find this much worth of house, and again, from our perspective, and if you've seen our podcast before, I like to keep it real. I don't want to be house poor. Like, I know we can afford.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, you're right. I don't want anyone to be house poor. And that comes into the pre-interview questions, is really understanding where you're going. If it doesn't necessarily disqualify you from buying a house, but let's just say, Brent and Lucy, we feel that Lucy she's going to take a back seat. She's going to just be a stay-at-home mom. Brent, you're going to be the sole income provider, but you're not going to do it for another year or two. Well, right now you could qualify for that $500,000 house, but in 2 years, as we've discussed, you wouldn't. So is it worth the investment now? Even though you can afford it now, that doesn't mean, and it doesn't, we don't, just because people are self-employed doesn't mean, you can't buy a house. And a lot of people, if the reality is we're all a hair's breadth from a disability or an accident that could render us inability to afford, but we don't run on that risk but we do make considerations of where is our life going. You know,
see, I love to talk about that, because there are a lot of people out there that are like, oh, you know what, we make like we're making 6 figures now, like we're gonna go out and we're gonna buy X and new car, and we want to buy all this furniture for the house, and
get all excited.
And well, you know, because I'm an analytical person, I start thinking like, okay,
are you talking about me?
No.
Okay.
No. Analytical person, like I start thinking, okay, so what if in a year, you know, job changes, income reduces, somebody, like you said, somebody wants to stay home. I like to think about all of that before I make any purchase, any big purchase like that. I'm always thinking about that, but it scares me for those people that, like, right now they're making all this money. So, okay, we're going to get all this house and we're going to get all this stuff, not planning like forward thinking, you know?
Yes. Oftentimes people, as they make more money, their living expenses, living lifestyle, cost of living increases, and more eating out, nicer clothes, things like that, more activities, more vacations. And it's not wrong. It's just numbers. You know, you know, if the number's 2, you're not getting an extra 1 out of it. It's there's that limit. And I think there is all that. And I think even there is another level to just buying a house. So there are the 2 basics. There's the principal and interest. So you have the amount money borrowed, the loan. You have the interest accrued every month, or it's actually daily. It's compounded daily, but you pay for it every month. But then you have homeowners insurance. How much is your house policy going to cost? If you're in a flood zone, there's flood insurance that's necessary. Do you live in a community that has an HOA? There's that cost. If you're putting less than 20% down, you're going to have mortgage insurance. So there's an additional cost. And then you have just the living expenses. How much is your electrical bill going to be? Your water bill? What's it going to cost you to maintain your yard, to maintain the pool? Those factors really can make a purchase shrink in size to be maybe a little bit more reasonable. And that's even why, like, the difference between a townhouse to a standalone. But that's some of those things that you really have to take into consideration when you're buying a house. Because, like Brent said, you don't want to be cash poor, and it may not necessarily be because of a job loss. But once you get established in the home, you're going, dang, now I need a lawnmower, and now a weed eater, and now I got to buy chlorine every week. I got to buy gas every week. I'm spending this time, and those are real factors when someone's buying a house.
Well, some of those crazy things like, oh, now my car's broken down, like we got to go buy a new car.
Oh, goodness.
Right, and that'll be a payment on top of what you just got. It's like, I guess it's also playing into that emotion too. You get excited about this huge house. Like, I just got a promotion. I got, pay raise. I'm going to get this big house. And it's almost like going into a store and getting excited about something you really want, but it costs more than you would normally pay. So it takes that, I guess, willpower to, okay, I'm going to walk away from this. Let's leave. Let's talk about it. And if it makes sense after the emotion settles, then we can come back and get it.
Right.
When your brain is logical again.
and it goes back to the beginning. If you're feeling the itch to buy a house, you need to know what you qualify for. There's a lot of people, and I know your podcast goes out pretty far, but just here in the Tampa Bay area, there's a lot of people who are renting, and they're renting standalone homes, and they've been doing it for a couple of years, and they're getting tired of the rent. They hear their friends buying houses and what their down payment, what their monthly payments are, and that's good. That's a good trigger. But we start putting that cart before the horse. And we go, well, how much house can I buy? We start looking at houses, and it becomes very emotional because we see something we like. It's in a good neighborhood. It's got the right architectural style. It's pretty bathroom, whatever that attraction is, without one being ready, because we're going to look at things like, do you have 2 years of employment? You can come out of college and buy a house, but there's things that, do you have the qualified income? Where's your credit stand? Have you filed your taxes? There's things that are necessary to make this transaction happen, that have to be taken into consideration early. I've talked with borrowers from a year ago that are actually now ready to buy a house. it can take some time, but if you're patient, there's some things, good things come to those who wait. And I think buying a house is one of those. So if you're patient, you can find the neighborhood you want to live in. You can find the house you want. You can find it at the right price. You just have to have those steps in order so that you can buy that house and that you can live with less stress, that you're not worried about, can I make this next month's payment?
Absolutely. Well, it's funny because you said patience, and patience is one of the fruits of the spirit. I think is one of the hardest ones, along with the self-control.
I was gonna say
Self-control.
Right? Yeah. Yes, 100%. So Josh, we've covered a lot of information through the podcast.
A lot of great points that you brought up.
I love all of them, and I could sit here and talk for hours because this stuff really gets me charged up. But talking to that one couple, like, what would be the one takeaway? Like, if you had something to tell a couple, right, that's in either beginning to start the process or in the process, what would be your one takeaway that you want to share with them?
Create a written budget.
We didn't even talk about budgets, but
love that.
Yeah,
it's the beginning. You need to know where your money's going. You don't have to be super formal. It's the more detailed you can be, the better. But you can. I personally budget in big categories: house payment, kids, pets, and shopping, and debts. And so, like, I have a truck payment. We own a travel trailer camper. So but I break it down into categories. How much money do we need for shopping, which is food and clothes? How much does the kids cost? That's their tuition and their activities. You know, how much does my house cost, which is everything. So my mortgage, my water, my electric, my insurance, all that's escrowed in, all the things in my house. And I look at bigger picture. I know some people who itemize everything. That's not me, but it's a budget. You need a budget. If you are thinking at all about buying a house, you need to know how much money you're making and where it's going, and then start making those very important decisions of what to cut and how to save so that you can buy a house. That's the number one. And if you can come to an agreement on the budget, you're halfway there to buying a house.
I love it. That's awesome. So create a written budget.
That is
create a written budget.
Yep, I love that.
So
yes.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, if once you have that written budget, it adds to those layers. It lets you see your debts. It allows you to evaluate, do we need this subscription, or can I add that extra $15, $20 a month to paying off this credit card? Because again, debt to income ratio is probably, if I can get you pre-approved with a credit score, the one biggest factor that's going to make or break your purchase is your debt to income ratio, period.
I love the budget thing because I don't think a lot of people do that. They're just like, oh, I make this much money. They're kind of just paying for stuff and buying stuff. Oh, we're going out this weekend. When you see it on paper, it does something different to you.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay. So again, love that, creating a budget. We talked about a lot of information. Josh, you are a valuable resource to have available.
100%.
So one question I have is, I know we're in Tampa, the Tampa Bay area, and you're in Tampa Bay area.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to reach out and touch to Josh, is there a certain net that you can cast, or are you able to help?
I can do anywhere in the state of Florida. So I'm licensed in the state of Florida. I have fellow LOs in other states. So if you wanted to connect with Security National, I can make a referral to another state. But if you're here in the Sunshine State, anywhere from Pensacola to Key West, I can help you out.
Awesome. So how do they get in contact with Josh?
My phone number is the fastest, easiest way to do it. And that's 813-293-1291. Call or text 813-293-1291, or my email, which is my name, Josh Corbin @snmc.com. So JOSH.CORBIN @snmc.com. And that's you can find me on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram, Josh Corbin LO on Facebook. I try to post as much useful content as I can. I try to keep it a little humorous when I had a competition over breakfast items yesterday. I try to be educational, informative, and trying to get people out there. So
absolutely.
Well, we're sharing all your stuff because
it's
great, and we definitely believe in you, and we believe in the relationship we've had for so many years. So it's awesome to have that connection already, because people need a trustworthy person that's reliable and honest and dependable, and you've got all those.
Yes.
So
I appreciate that.
absolutely.
Thank you, Miss Lucy. And I look forward to doing business with you in the near future.
Oh, I'm so excited. Oh, I can't wait. You just wait. We're going to hit the ground running. Absolutely.
We will. No, it is knowing who you're working with is really important, especially when it comes to the sensitive. You know, I'm dealing with Social Security, bank account, tax returns.
Oh yeah.
You know, and we have a very high standard. You know, password protection, annual background checks. We do I get 8 hours of continued education every year. So I'm in the middle of that right now. Very high standard when it comes to compliance. Because honestly, I don't want to go to jail or pay a $10,000 fine because I didn't protect someone's privacy or I mishandled something. So it's a very big deal for us to, you know, handle this, and for our company and for me personally, my reputation's at stake, and I don't want to ruin that.
Absolutely. Well, we thank you so much, Josh, for
Thank you.
loaning us some time. Yes. I know you're super busy. Thank you.
Loaning, is that a pun on words?
That was a pun on words. Absolutely. I got it. I thought it was a joke.
It was by accident. It just happened.
You're being led, what can I say?
Yes, thank you so much. And we love you, Josh. We will definitely be working together.
Yes.
And we love you too.
God bless you, and thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a blessed day, my brother. God bless.
All right. God bless. Bye.